Okay, guys, today we're going to get into Renaissance science, and then we'll talk about some other things after that in some following videos. And I can't even begin to say how tremendously the entire world would change through many of the scientists in this time period. And we're just going to highlight a few, but it's pretty revolutionary. Now, one of the big things and why science gets really popular is we're beginning to look at the world in a new way. Lots and lots of questions that science, they want to just know, and that's really important. You have people that are curious, and people that are curious tend to find stuff out. The past isn't all fact. No longer are guys like Aristotle and Ptolemy that's not 100% fact, and we don't question it. The development of experimentation becomes incredibly important. It's like, not only do we have this great theory, but let's see if it actually works. And of course will be mathematics, which tends to kind of, prove everything. One of the things that really helped will be development of scientific societies. Now, initially, a lot of these are kind of informal, and the purpose of them was so that people can talk about ideas and balance things off one another. But eventually, they become, really formal. You have, for instance, the English Royal Society, which was actually given a charter and funding, so you have the federal funding of science. What? Thank you, King Charles II. And then you have the French Royal Academy of Science, which got huge money from King Louis XIV. So he bankrupted the country, but people would be smart. On the right, you see this is the actual English Royal Society. On the bottom, this is a painting of the French Royal Academy with Louis, coming to hang out. And many of these scientists would actually get salaries and pensions, which, just like Renaissance art, it was kind of important. If you can't make any money, why go into science? Well, now it's, a job. And the other big thing will be journals and facilities, okay? The importance of sharing information, once again, Johann Gutenberg, thank you, he's the man. Now we write things, we write our books, we write scientific journals, people read them, and then they question or support or experiment. It's fantastic. You also need top-of-the-line facilities, places where scientific tools and instruments could be used. It's a place that you can develop theories and then actually do your testing. Observations were built in Paris and Greenwich, England. This is the one in Greenwich, England, which are equipped with telescopes and as much modern day stuff as we can get. And it's all about cooperation. We could learn some stuff from science. All right, let's just get into the people because it's going to be absolutely huge. Now, I'm not going to lie, there are going to be some issues that people have. Some people look at scientists as elitist or discriminatory because, they're smart and therefore they must not like commoners. There are some guys that were like that, like Galileo was a jerk, but unfortunately, that's the problem. Some people don't look at science as a way some people look at it as a way to advance, but again, their elitism thing here. But there would be some important things that will develop, and we'll continue discussing this, okay? So, as I digress, get back to Nicolaus Copernicus. I mean, he's awesome. Again, the previous view of the universe by Aristotle and Ptolemy, it was the geocentric view. The Earth is at the center. It is non-moving. Everything moves around it. Okay, and fun fact, no one really thought the Earth was flat, so stop it. Flat Earthers, stop it. Moving on. So, Nicolaus Copernicus was a Polish man. He studied quite a bit at the University of Krakow and other places like Bologna and Padua. And so, what did he actually discover? Well, he did come across some alternate views of the universe, like some sun-centered stuff, as a young man. And, he's going to make some pretty big discoveries. His big book would be On the Revolution of Heavenly Spheres, which was published in 1543. Actually, it was published the day he died. He was scared to publish it because of backlash and criticism and ridicule. He wasn't very confident in himself, but, he got a lot of stuff right. What were the main ideas? Well, it's real simple. The Ptolemaic system actually doesn't match observation of the heavens. When you look up the stars don't move the right way. Like, it's just wrong. And so what were his main ideas? One, the sun is the center, and the sun is at the center of the solar system. Correct. He said it was immovable. Not so much. 8 planets revolve around it. We didn't have Pluto, and we don't now have Pluto. Poor Pluto. The moon revolves around the Earth, and the reason why the sun and stars seem to move is because the planet rotates on an axis as it goes around the sun. Victory! He did still think the Earth would have all of the orbits around the sun were circular, but we'll get to that later. Now, there was some fallout. He was mostly correct, and a lot of people would be like, oh my God, I need to look at his work. It was one of the first time people actually went against Aristotle. People began to question their place in the world as like, where is God? Would God do this? Because God was supposed to create the earth, and drama. We'll get to it in class. And then finally, many religious people will publish against him. And there were some guys early on, like Galileo, that was like, yeah, this is a bunch of junk. So in the end, there was a lot of fallout, but Copernicus is the man. And Copernicus then gives us, Kepler. So who is Johannes Kepler? Johannes Kepler lived from 1571 to 1630. Incredible levels of education. He goes to the University of Tübingen to study theology. His parents thought he was going to be a minister, but instead he's like, hey, astronomy is really cool. I'm going to do that instead. So eventually he will become a teacher of mathematics and astronomy, and his parents were very upset about that. So sad. In Graz in Austria. He was really big into astrology and magic. He actually kept a book of magic and felt the universe was constructed of like geometric figures, and that astrology and all that stuff would kind of like influences our lives, which there's not a lot of evidence of, but it's pretty cool. And once again, a guy who was pretty much trashed by others until they realized that, he was right. So what does he develop? Well, he develops the law of planetary motion. And through use of mathematics, which was very, very important, he actually gets the coolest title. He was the imperial mathematician to Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor. That's awesome. And so through the study of mathematics, what he's able to see is that the orbits around the sun of the planets are actually elliptical, and the sun is at the center. And what he is actually able to prove using mathematics is that the closer a planet is to the sun, the faster it moves. And then he figures out their actual specific orbits. And what this does is it completely obliterates the Ptolemaic system, and would again spur more people on after him. It's really, really crucial of what he's able to do. And you really can't understate it. Probably the second most important scientist of this era was Galileo Galilei. And if you don't understand the meme on the right, you need to look up Queen, you need to listen to their music, and we'll discuss later. He lives from 1564 to 1642, and let's just jump into what he does. He is Italian. He is able to build a telescope. He actually reads about a looking glass that people used to see far distances, and so he just makes one. Pretty impressive. And through using the telescope, he will do a lot of discoveries and then write a book known as the Starry Messenger. And what he wants to tell us is the stuff in the universe. He discovers that there are mountains and craters on the moon. It is not a perfect sphere. He discovers the 4 moons revolving around Jupiter, so other planets have moons. He understands the phases of Venus, which understands how it moves through the universe. He discovers sunspots. And what the thing is that these observations told him that most of the things in the universe seem to be made of the same stuff as Earth. Before, everybody thought all the planets and stuff were made from like this perfect crystalline substance, and they're not. And then, which is very interesting, is he actually would publish in Italian, so a lot of regular people would get to read his work. And it was really popular. He actually becomes a court mathematician of Florence, and things were going super good. and then he will run afoul of the church. Now, initially, the church kind of saw his work and they left it alone, mainly because he didn't really go after Kepler and Copernicus. But as he got older, he started to accept these things. And because Galileo was so popular, if Galileo is accepting these things, then others might accept it. And that's when the Roman Inquisition would initially go after him. And basically, what really got him was that, or the transcript says that the doctrine that the sun was at the center of the world and immovable was false and absurd, formerly heretical and contrary to Scripture, whereas the doctrine that the earth was not the center of the world but moved and has further a daily motion was philosophically false and absurd and theologically at least erroneous. So they say, you need to back off, you need to stop doing work and shut your trap. That's what it started off, and he kind of goes away. Then he publishes his next book called The Dialogue on the Two Chief World Systems. And basically in this, again, he writes in Italian, and what he does, it's a dialogue between Simplicio, who was not the brightest guy in the world, who was the supporter of Aristotle and Ptolemy, and Sagredo, who argue the ideas of how the universe works, and basically all these ideas that Galileo discovered, plus Copernicus and whatnot, were seen as more favorable. Then the church goes after him. He is put on trial in 1633. He is found guilty of teaching Copernicism. He is forced to recant, and he lives the rest of his life in a state in Florence. However, he wasn't quite done yet. He also works under house arrest, and he does a lot of stuff in mechanics. He works out the ideas behind inertia. Again, the idea of a state of constant motion and a state of constant rest are one and the same, meaning they'll stay in that unless you get a force. It'll also get the idea of mass and acceleration, which is really, really important. But sadly, Italy will fall away from science because of the Inquisition. But Galileo leads us to the greatest scientist ever, Isaac Newton. Period. No, you can't tell me anybody else. I'm sorry, it's Newton. So his young life, he was born in England the same year that Galileo died. He does not do much in elementary school. At one point, his mom pulls him out to be like a farmer, but a lot of people in school were like, no, we think this guy has some potential, so they get him back in school. He arrives at Cambridge University. You see a picture there on the left. He actually could have gone to Cambridge or Oxford. He decided on Cambridge, and Cambridge likes to rub Oxford's nose in that pretty much every single year. His main things that he is most known for, he did in a 3-year period from 1666 to 1668. He produced some science that changed the entire world. And here is Neil deGrasse Tyson. So let's just give you an idea of how important he was.
Isaac Newton, I mean, just you read his writings. The hair stands up on, I don't have hair there, but if I did, it would stand up on the back of my neck. You read his writings, the man was connected to the universe in ways that I've never seen another human being connected. It's kind of spooky, actually. He discovers the laws of optics, figures out that white light is composed of colors. That's kind of freaky right there. You take your colors of the rainbow, put them back together, you get white light again. That freaked out the artists of the day. How does that work? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet gives you white. The laws of optics, he discovers the laws of motion and the universal law of gravitation. Then a friend of his says, well, why do these orbits of the planets, why are they in the shape of an ellipse? Sort of flattened circle. Why aren't they some other shape? And he said, I don't know. I'll get back to you. So he goes home, comes back a couple months later. Here's why. They're actually conic sections of a cone that you cut. And they said, well, how did you find this out? How did you determine this? Well, I had to invent integral and differential calculus to determine this. Then he turned 26. Then he turned 26. We've got people slogging through calculus in college just to learn what it is that Isaac Newton invented on a dare, practically. So that's my man, Isaac Newton.
Yep, and that's pretty much my view of him. So what he did. His biggest work was the Principia, in which we get his invention of integral calculus. Now, there was another mathematician, okay, Leibniz, who was out of Germany, who also developed calculus independently, but it was proven that Newton did it first, and his calculus was actually a little bit more efficient. He also figured out the principles and the laws of gravity, which we have today, which is crucial for us. He also discovers the laws of motion, which will really change kind of the way we observe the universe, okay? He will then discover optics and understanding why we see and how we see. And then he also, not only did he figure out the whole colors and white light thing, he also theorized the fact that there was types of lights that we couldn't see, like gamma rays and other types of things, UV light. So he actually figured that out. And he also believed in, magic and stuff like that. He studied alchemy. So, he was a pretty full guy. The entire universe changed. Okay, in the time from the year, I'm going to say 1000, all the way up to Newton in the 1700s, in the 1660s, most of our lives didn't change. Someone who lived in 1660 basically existed the same amount as someone in the year 1000. And then from 1660 to now, we went to the moon and we have sent an object out of our solar system, and that's all because of Newton. And we're going to get more in depth in this class. Make sure you guys get your assignments, and I'll see you soon.